Hi, I'm Sammy, and today we'll be talking about USB drive-by. USB drive-by is a device that you stylishly wear around your neck. It's actually a $20 teensy microcontroller that I've programmed that if we plug into an unlocked machine, it will emulate or pretend to be a keyboard and mouse, entirely taking over the machine, controlling virtually all network traffic, and within seconds you can walk away, USB drive-by safely back around your neck, and the machine and network traffic permanently under your remote control, despite any NAT, router, or firewall. So, of course, when my best friend Matt was away from his computer for a minute, I immediately used it on him. Let's see it in action and then learn why, how to create it, and how to prevent it. So here you can see the USB teensy microcontroller. We plug it into the machine and immediately it behaves like a USB keyboard and starts typing. It actually opens system preferences, then it'll actually open up the terminal. From the terminal, it'll make an outbound connection to my server. In case you have a little snitch or a firewall on the machine, it actually uses the keyboard to go up, allow the connection outbound forever. Then it installs this backdoor or reverse shell in cron. It runs every 5 minutes. Then we actually move where the system preferences is. You see we have actually moved the window. We open up the DNS settings within the network preferences. We move down. We change the primary name server to a name server that we control. Then we can't actually use the keyboard to hit OK, so we move the mouse to the very top left of the corner and then move it down to the exact location where we know the button is, even though we can't really see what's going on. Afterwards, it closes system preferences and you're done. You can actually remove the keyboard, the teensy microcontroller, and walk away. Now, in this example, I actually am DNS spoofing Facebook.com, so when you open Facebook, you actually go to a fake website. Additionally, since every 5 minutes, the machine is connecting back to a server that I control, I can then send commands to this machine at any time. If you remember, we allowed it through the firewall, so if you do have a local firewall, it'll evade that. And because it's making an outbound connection, rather than allowing an inbound connection, we don't have to worry about a router in the way or opening up any ports of any sort. It's essentially a reverse tunnel or a reverse shell. So we'll learn a little bit about how this works and the code to perform something like this and why we use Teensy. We should also note that there's a very cool proof of concept that Karsten Knoll, Sasha Kribler, and Jacob Lell did. They created something called Bad USB, and they demonstrated this at Black Hat. Essentially, they've created a more advanced device, which is very cool, which not only can emulate a keyboard as we're doing here, but can do a few other things. It can even behave as a network controller, basically a network interface. So the computer might think that you're actually plugging in Ethernet card or a wireless card when you're really just plugging in this malicious device. Alright, now back to USB drive-by. Now let's actually go over the code while seeing what's happening here. So we define a server. This is essentially a DNS server. I've included the DNS server code as well that I wrote in order to normally look up host names for the user, but when we specify certain host names, for example Facebook, we can point somewhere else. Then we set up the LED so we'll actually know when the software is done based off how it blinks. First we'll open up Spotlight. Spotlight or Alfred or Quicksilver depending on what the user has installed. And inside of that, we'll type system preferences. This opens up the system preferences. We'll then open up a terminal, and within the terminal, we'll hit Command N, which opens a new terminal window. Now, in the case that the server or system is using Little Snitch, which is a local firewall for OS X, we'll actually evade it by sending keystrokes into the window that Little Snitch opens. So we can see that here. Basically, in the terminal, we make an outbound connection to our remote shell or to our remote server. And assuming Little Snitch opens, we don't know since we don't actually have any feedback from the computer. We're simply blindly sending keyboard commands and mouse commands. We'll hit up, 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 left, left. Now that should actually allow all connections permanently. Now if there's no Little Snitch installed, we don't want that up, 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 left, left to run in terminal. So we hit Control A, we add a pound sign just in case the command runs, the pound sign does nothing, and then we hit Control C to actually erase that line or ignore that line. We hit enter, and then we just go back. From there, we install this backdoor or reverse shell in cron. Cron essentially allows us to schedule when to run software. So this backdoor is now constantly connecting back out at every 5 minutes. The nice thing about this is you don't need to open up any ports. It doesn't matter if you're behind a NAT or a router. This will actually make an outbound connection that will be allowed. From here, we use AppleScript. AppleScript is doing something interesting. When we want to change the DNS server, we cannot actually use a keyboard to change a DNS server on a Mac. OS X prevents the user from changing the DNS servers unless you're actually a real user and you're using the mouse. Even if you try to use the network setup command line software, it will ask you for a password, and we don't know the password. There is one condition. If you use the network preferences as a user and you can click around with a mouse and see where all the buttons are, you can get through. So what we do is we actually move the window. We move the system preferences window to the very top left of the screen. We do that with this AppleScript. Once we move to the top left of the screen, we know that the size will always be the same of this, so then we can actually command the mouse and make the mouse move to the top left of the screen because we don't actually know where the mouse is. So now that we've opened up the system preferences, we've moved the system preferences window, we actually command tab back into system preferences, we hit command F to search, we type in DNS servers to open the DNS servers area or section, since we can't do that from the network preferences directly unless we use the mouse. Then we can key down, we type in our evil server, and here we move our mouse to the very top left. Now you'll see something interesting here. You'll see that we actually have hot corners enabled on this system. So to get out of hot corners, we just move out of the corner and then move back into the corner to disengage it. If you don't have hot corners, it doesn't matter. You're simply just moving your mouse a little bit more. Then we move to a very specific place or specific location on the screen, and that's to the OK button. This critically requires the mouse. We cannot use the keyboard to get to this button. Otherwise, we would be prevented from altering the DNS servers. We hit OK, we click, and then we move a little bit more, and then we click Apply. Then we quit system preferences. Then on the terminal window, we hit type exit, close out the window, quit the terminal, and that's that. From then, if we look at our loop, then we actually just blink really fast on the Teensy. Now, you might be saying, well, why don't I just use, let's say, an Arduino Nano? Arduino Nano doesn't actually support acting as a USB keyboard or mouse. If you do have a bigger Arduino like an Uno, that will work. However, it's a bit bigger and clunkier. And the Teensy itself is actually really powerful. It's only about $19, $20, and it can do a lot, much more powerful than a lot of the Arduinos. Arduinos are great for a lot of things, but depending on the application, Teensy might actually work a lot better for you. One thing to note is, if you end up making a pendant out of this or connecting some sort of a metallic chain, you'll want to actually make sure you watch out for the pins that you connect to. If you look at the back, the top pin on one side is the ground and another pin is the voltage in. You want to make sure you don't actually short those together. If you use a metallic chain like I'm using, they will actually be conductive. So you'll actually be tying the voltage in pin all the way to the ground pin. So on the right hand side, make sure you actually use the analog ground or AGND pin, and the other side that you connect it to is the GND. You realistically probably don't want to have any sort of metal touching that could short out any other pins on here if you are connecting it to a computer. So you may want to use a non-metallic just piece that connects to the Teensy itself. But for those of you who have been asking me what this thing around my neck is, now you know. And if you enjoyed this, please hit subscribe and check out some of the other videos that I'm putting up. Alright, thanks. Bye.